Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the events coordinator here at McNally Robinson in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and homeland of the Métis. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Zilla Jones's book, The World So Wide. Standing in front of you here, sorry. This book is published by Cormorant Books. And as our host this evening, we've got Iryn Tushabe. So thank you to Zilla and Iryn for joining us tonight and for working with us at McNally to make this event happen. This event is being live streamed, so please just be aware of the web camera up to your right here. We will not be filming the audience, don't worry about that. However, if your phones go off in the middle of the event, the web camera might pick that up and it might live on the internet forever. So now would be a great time to silence or turn off your phone. Thank you. If you'd like to buy copies of The World So Wide, we have some up here on the signing table. We also have some on the desk by where you first walked in. And we'll have a signing portion after the event here. You're welcome to get your book signed before you purchase it. We just ask that you please do remember to stop by the cash desk on your way out. Again, please and thank you. So I'd like to say a few words of introduction about our host tonight. Iryn Tushabe is an Ugandan-Canadian writer and journalist. Her creative nonfiction has appeared in Ada, The Walrus, and in the Trace Press anthology River in an Ocean, Essays on Translation. Her short fiction has twice been included in the Journey Prize stories, the best of Canada's new writers. She was a finalist for the Kane Prize for African Writing in 2021 and a 2023 winner of the Writers' Trust McClellan and Stewart Journey Prize. Her debut novel, Everything is Fine Here, was published in April by House of Anansi Press, and we were honored to host her Saskatoon launch as well. And it must have gone all right because she agreed to return and host an event here for us. So I will now hand things over to Iryn to introduce Zilla and get us rolling. Everyone, please give her a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Jasper, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you very much for joining us for Zilla's launch. Zilla Jones is an African-Canadian anti-racist educator, lawyer, mother, and singer of Caribbean, Chinese, and European heritage, writing on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. She was born in the UK and now lives in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She's a winner of the Journey Prize, a finalist of the Writers' Trust Bronwen Wallace Emerging Writers Award, and a finalist for the CBC Short Story Prize. Her writing has appeared in many literary journals, including Event, the Fiddlehead, Prairie Fire, the Malahat Review, and the Bayou Magazine. But I know Zilla both as my sister and my friend, even if today is the first time we've met in person. I admire Zilla's work and storytelling, and I see a kinship between us and in our work. And I feel honored to be here sharing in the launch of her gorgeous novel, which has now been out in the world for about a month. Yeah. And I'll tell you a little bit about the novel itself without spoiling it. Let's see if I can manage that. The World So Wide is her debut novel, and it has been described as historical fiction that packs the same punch as a 5-act opera. And that is true. It follows Felicity, an opera prodigy with a defiant, tumultuous spirit and insatiable heart, as she finds her voice and rises to the international stage. Earlier on in London, where she's studying opera, she meets the members of the West Indian Student Association and joins their activism, and also falls in love with one of its members, Claude. She already has some experience, some knowledge and experience of Grenada's political upheavals, but meeting this group brings her into the revolution in a more meaningful way, as these young men and women mean to topple the corrupt government back home. Okay, I don't want to say too much and ruin it. So I'm going to hand things over to Zilla and allow her to perhaps start us off with a reading, and then we'll have a conversation. And toward the end, I can allow you to ask some questions if you have any.
Hello, everybody. We're small but mighty. Thank you for coming out. So I'm going to read a couple of short sections of my novel. And the first part comes from earlier in the novel, from the 4th chapter, and it takes place in the island of Grenada. Felicity, the main character, is at this point, she's 10 years old, turning 11, and her and her mom have come back for her grandmother. She's sick and then she dies, so they're now going to the funeral. And at the same time that her grandmother is being buried, there's also a workers' strike on the island, which happened in Grenada in 1958. That's the year we're in. And it was called the Red Sky Revolution because the skies were so lit up with fires, just like we're seeing now, for different reason. The reason they had fires there was because the workers burned down the estates and burnt all the crops because they were angry about how they were being treated. And that brought in a new reality where now there were more rights for the workers. And the leader of that was Uncle Percy in the book. In real life, it was a man named Eric Gary. And this person became the first prime minister and first leader of Grenada some 15, 20 years later, and ends up being corrupt. But at this point in the book, he is still a worker's hero. He is looked at as almost a god by people on the island because he has improved their working conditions. And so Felicity is seeing both her grandmother's funeral and this strike. Actually, maybe I'll go back a little bit and also read part of the strike. Horns and whistles sounded from the street, and the loud bang of a drum grew closer. What's happening, Felicity asked Arnold. Arnold is her cousin. Is the strike. It must be the strike. The strike was the reason that none of Felicity's aunts had been going to work on the cocoa estates. Why we should go, Aunt Beulah had demanded the week before, when Aunt Mary's resolve had wavered. We already starving on what they pay we, and now they saying cocoa prices crashed, so they cutting we wages. How are we supposed to live? And they want we bow we head and put we hands behind we back when we talking to the estate manager? Why? Because they white and we black? Aunt Ida added, Uncle Percy say we must stand tall to stand for all. Uncle Percy was the leader of the estate workers. In Aunt Beulah's house, he had taken on higher standing than Jesus, and his picture was higher on the wall than the one of Christ on the cross. Felicity yearned to see Uncle Percy up close, this man who had dark skin, far darker than hers, who drew people from across the island to see him. They walked miles, packed minibuses or crammed donkey carts to go wherever he was giving a speech. Felicity, too, wanted to be someone crowds would come to see, someone they would cheer for. You see her future being premonition here. Felicity ran behind Arnold to the bottom of the road. He stopped at the rum shop, where he swept her back with his arm, just as an endless, curling tail of strikers surged past. They waved hoes, pitchforks, and shovels, and shouted, fight, 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 as they marched in the direction of the capital city of St. George's. They wore the coveralls and aprons of the estate workers. Their bare feet and ankles were pale with dust. Arnold lifted his arm and held it up, repeating the chant, fight, fight, fight. The workers grinned and shook their tools in the children's direction. People kept coming down the hill, merging with groups of more workers arriving from either side. Bang-a-rang, shouted Arnold. Way, look at that. Felicity had not seen him smile so brightly. I want to march with them, he said. But you're not an estate worker, said Felicity. I will be. How do you know that? Maybe you'll be what, Felicity? Arnold's voice turned rough and got louder, not the happy, celebrating loud of before, but a raw, dangerous loud. I can be doctor, lawyer. That is for you people in foreign. My father worked on the estate. His father worked on the estate. And I go work on the estate too. But you're good at arithmetic, Felicity said. Arnold helped her with her own work when the numbers confounded her. So? What that got to do with anything? He shouted. Shrimps, Felicity. My ma can't afford secondary school. How I can go? A truck rumbled by, and Arnold grabbed Felicity's arm and pulled her off the road. It was full of white people in soldiers' uniforms, wearing helmets, their shields and rifles poking through the window as it followed the crowds into town. Oh, shrimps, said Arnold, just as one of the marchers ahead of them bent to pick up a rock and threw it at the van. Other rocks followed. The first shot made a boom that could be heard above the screaming and the chanting. Run, said Arnold, and Felicity ran. Even as she was terrified, she registered a feeling of happiness. She was connected to something, to people standing tall, to people fighting, refusing to accept less. Arnold thought that because she lived in Canada, everything was easy for her. But Felicity remembered how many times she and Mom went into a store and left empty-handed because the clerks wouldn't serve them. How no one sat near them on the bus. That's all right, Mom always said. More room to put our things. But Felicity knew it was just one more way they didn't belong. One of Felicity's cousins was dispatched to the rectory to find out if the funeral would be postponed due to the unrest sweeping the island. He returned to announce that Father said it was going ahead. The pallbearers came to their duties fresh from the march, and the proceedings were interrupted by the shouts of workers coming and going from town. There was a funeral mass in a Catholic church. Felicity couldn't understand any of it because it was all in Latin, read by a priest wearing a long robe with wide sleeves. When he turned his back to them and lifted first a big white circle, then an ornate silver cup, Mom whispered to Felicity to look away and said, "Remember, salvation is by grace alone." After the mass, the men of the family dug the grave by the side of the road. As the coffin was lowered into its earthy pit, the mourners sat in a circle around it, singing hymns to the rhythm of spoons clinking against the glass bottles of the kerosene-filled Masantos as flames shivered within. People in Grenada normally feared the night, and as soon as the rim of the sun turned pink and dipped lower in the sky, they rushed home, lest they be accosted by a ligaroo, a blood-sucking werewolf-like creature, or a bagui, a ghost. In the darkness, the reedy singing sounded like the voices of the undead creatures. Later that night, lying under the mosquito net, Felicity watched a paper coil burning beside her bed as further defense against insects. She swung between a longing to return to Canada and a mourning for Grenada. "Felicity," whispered Arnold from the doorway, "you sleeping?" "No," she whispered back. "You want to go see what's happening?" Of course she did. She rolled away from Mom's sleeping form and followed her cousin downstairs. Arnold waited while Felicity put on her shoes. Like the rest of her family, Arnold didn't own a pair. Felicity felt hot and squirmy about wearing hers, but Mom insisted. "They have feet like leather from walking in these hills all their lives," Mom said. "You don't." The moon was a tiny sliver of light, and the only other things to pierce the dark were the pinpricks of the fireflies and the stars. There were no Masantos to light the way. Sound was the only guide. The blackness was alive with the scratching cries of the crickets. They followed the distant trail of song laid down by the strikers. As they grew closer, the sound rearranged itself into words. "We stand tall, we stand for all, we love, we leader, best of all." Felicity knew the song was about Uncle Percy. A flash pushed the darkness aside. A searing yellow ball that expanded in ripples, growing orange, rimmed with gray smoke. Its hungry crackle silenced the singing. The scent of hot chocolate rose into the air. "They're burning down the crops," Arnold said. "All the cocoa trees." He grabbed Felicity's hand and they stood by the road, watching as the sky grew red, reflecting the flames below. It was as bright as if the sun had risen early and was beaming its light upon the island. Felicity's eyes grew wet, and she didn't know whether her tears came from the smoke or from the sudden flame of pride that swept through her with the speed of a fire leaping from estate to estate. "I'm going to fight too," Arnold said to Felicity. "I want Grenada to be free. I want to stand tall."
Thank you so much for that lovely reading. I think we can already see the sort of person that Felicity will grow up to be. She chases her dreams. And I think even her singing career in a way starts there, doesn't it? A little bit, right? There's a lovely scene later that comes towards the end where she's trying out her operatic voice, and some appreciate it, but there's a grandmother who it puts a smile on her face, and I think that she carries that forward just to see what her art, how it can, affect other people. I love her spirit. I've just the whole experience reading this book has been a wonderful experience for me. Even just hearing you read now, I was thinking about homelands, distant and near, about diasporic life, but especially arts. and the way that it carries Felicity through life. How even on stage, she grows up to become this international operatic star. You'll realize once you read the book, and she has this presence. She's this powerful presence, but on the stage, she inhabits her characters by drawing from her own life, but also in life, she draws from her art to kind of sustain herself, because life is not very easy for Felicity. I wondered if you might talk to us about that intersectionality between life and art and how it works for Felicity.
Yeah, I think that it's really significant that in this scene that you just heard, the strikers are singing, and that's what draws her to them. And so from a very young age, Felicity sees the power of music, that it can spark social revolutions, and it can bring about social change, and it can unify people and bring people together, and it also can push people apart.
Yeah.
And so she always wants to be part of something bigger than herself. So she sees this strike happening, this protest, and she sees the power that a leader has in Uncle Percy. And so she wants that power for herself, and she wants to be able to have that kind of influence, but she also wants to be loved.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the conflict in her life, that they can't always coexist. But in terms of her art specifically, because anyone that knows much about opera singing knows like what a rare path it is. There's so few people that can do that well. There's so few people that can make a career doing that, or really anything in the arts. It takes so much study, so much discipline, so much focus. You're always on. And so for Felicity to, and especially for her being from Canada when really Europeans were dominating in the field, being a person of color, a Black woman, when there really aren't many of them in opera, being a woman in a very male-dominated field where all the conductors are male and all the directors are male, and trying to make her name in that is exhausting, and it's difficult. And then she's also facing criticism from members of her own community, including her own partner, who think that this is frivolous, this is not forwarding the revolution, it is not working for our movement. You're doing something that elevates yourself and it pleases white people, but it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So they're not appreciating the sacrifices she's making. And so she really has to dig into herself to find how she can bring herself into these works that she's singing. And what does La Traviata have to do with me? And what does La Boheme have to do with me? And so she does that by connecting those stories to the Grenada Revolution and finding places where those characters might actually perhaps have revolutionary meanings, or where they might fit into this worldview. And at other times, she's almost letting the art drive her choices. So sometimes she'll do things because it's what an opera diva would do, or it's what would happen in an opera. So she does these very outrageous, sort of larger than life things that she justifies because that's what you do in opera. So it's sometimes unclear whether it is the art driving her life or the life driving her art, because they're so commingled together.
Yeah. It's such a powerful force that to be able to have that. I was interested in that choice of opera for her because she has a lovely voice. She could sing anything. So I wondered what kind of thought for you went into giving her that as the talent, that as the art that she would always inhabit and what kind of.
So the book does actually show that her other love is the blues. And so she does also sing the blues, which is African American art form, and she actually sings that sometimes when she just needs a break from opera. So she's drawn to that because her aunt loved the blues, and she feels in it a direct connection to the pain and suffering of Black people and the history that she's coming from. So she does also engage with the blues, but then a lot of times the opera world says, well, why are you wasting your time on this? And they're kind of snobby about it. So she has that conflict. But opera, I mean, it's just what her voice is made for. It's what she trains for. And then when she first goes to London to study, she goes to London, England to study, she goes to see her first opera, which is La Boheme. And that is, for those who maybe don't know the story, it's kind of what Rent was based on, if you know Rent. So it's starving artists in Paris, and the woman, a man fall in love, but the woman is dying of TB. And so it's a tragedy that she's dying, and then they break up, and then when she's almost at death's door, she comes back to her true love, and they reunite, but it's kind of too late because she dies. So it's a very melodramatic, very, very over the top Italian romance opera. It's got beautiful, beautiful melodies. It's often considered the best opera to see if you're just getting into opera, because it has everything that opera is known for, you know, the beautiful arias and lush orchestration, and this big story that's so relatable and yet so melodramatic. And so once Felicity sees that, then she says, that's what I want to do.
And it suits her so well.
Yeah.
Because she can be over the top sometimes.
Yeah. Like she just connects to it, and she just knows that this is what she wants to spend her life doing, even though it seems like a really unrealistic dream at the time. She has this belief in herself that I know I can do this, and I want to do it, and I will do it, and she does. She makes it happen.
Yeah. And it really takes her far in that, you know, in that path, because she's a Black woman breaking into this art form that, you know, her colleagues are telling her is not for us. Then you're kind of betraying us by really wanting to do this thing. And yet she elevates, not just, I mean, you could say that she uses opera to elevate the movement, to in her own way, to contribute to the revolution in her own way.
Definitely. Like, I think in multiple ways. So one, obviously, being just her very presence. We know that we say today representation matters, that when you have people represented at all levels of something or all areas of anything, it gives others permission to come into that space. So she is opening doors for other people just by her very presence. And she is also showing people what is possible, that you can train in something and reach the highest levels and reach excellence. So we talk about Black excellence as a kind of a modern concept, but this is really Black excellence. So these are the people that really paved the way so that others can be excellent. And so she's doing that, but then she's also bringing the message of the revolution into what she sings. She is using music to sometimes she sings at protests, and sometimes she sings at fundraisers or events that directly further the movement. So at one point she sings at a fundraiser, and people start giving money like crazy. And then the revolution is like, oh, we didn't realize that she could do that. Like, now we like this because now she's raising money for our cause, because she's drawing people in with what she's doing. And they're giving to the movement. So there's many ways that she can be part of it as a singer.
And also just as Felicity, because she's this woman who does not conform to what most of us want women, well, most society wants women to be.
Yes.
Like when they're under, am I spoiling it if I say when they're under house arrest somewhere? Okay.
Yeah.
When later in the book, they're under house arrest in Grenada, and they're supposed to not communicate with the people who was, you know, gun holders. But she's like, you know, the other women or part of the revolution are like feeding the men, cooking for the men, kind of sitting in those roles that sometimes Black men put women in, really, like because of patriarchy. Patriarchy affects everybody, regardless of race. But she kind of sneaks out, and she's allying herself with the soldiers, and she's gleaning pieces of information that help, you know, the situation. So it's not just her singing, it's just like her whole personhood that I just really, really adore. And I'm just lucky. I'm happy to see a woman like this, a rule breaker, a rebel, depicted so wholesomely. So I want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think this is definitely a feminist book. Like, I would say, I know like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie talks about being a feminist. Now her book's a feminist book. So I think my book's a feminist book. I think your book is a feminist book. And there aren't as many of those as you would think, because yes, in a lot of books, the women do play very expected roles. I know one thing that I've had is some readers and reviewers have kind of said, well, I don't really like Felicity. It was a great book, but I don't really like her. She's kind of selfish, and she's frustrating, she's irritating because she doesn't fit the mold of a traditional woman. I wrote that deliberately. I didn't do, it's not bad writing, right? Like, I want her to be, well, maybe it is, but I mean, I want her to be somebody who bucks the mold and is different and doesn't conform to the expectations of a woman. So that is very much a theme of the book, that womanhood and just what is it and what does it mean? Is it okay to like sex when you're a woman? Is it okay to like your body if you're not skinny? Is it, and your body is black? Is it okay
to admit that parenting is hard and you need help?
Is it okay to not want children as a woman? Is it okay to not think that being a mother is the best thing ever for your existence? And Felicity asks all these questions. And she doesn't have a lot of the shame and the hang-ups and the modesty and a lot of the conventions and expectations that women had, especially then and even now. So yes, that makes her sometimes unlikable or maybe unrelatable for some people, very relatable for others. And I think it's interesting because male writers will often write messy male characters, and I don't think they get the same pushback that when you write a woman that is like that. Like, I think of actually a music book that I've read, An Equal Music by Vikram Seth, which is a great book, but if anyone's read it, but it's this male violinist. So he's also in classical music, and he is a very maybe not so likable character. Like, he basically stalks this woman who's married, that is his ex, and then they have an affair, and then she tells him that she wants to go back to her husband, and he like grabs her and gives her a hickey so that she can't go back to her husband. And this guy's the hero of the book. And like, I have not seen many reviews that really like call that into question. Like why is that okay for this man to be toxic? And you know, there's many books with like toxic men, right? But you know, when a woman writes a book about a woman who is sexually liberated or is a feminist or doesn't need a man, all of a sudden people are reacting to it, right? Unlikable. So I expected that, and like I don't mind this. Like, you might read and think that I don't mind having these conversations, but I think I wanted to open the door a little bit to that conversations about like what is a leading lady in a book supposed to look like, and what are the possibilities. And I don't think we see a lot of, I think one character that I think actually reminds you a lot of Felicity, if you've read Fall on Your Knees by Anne-Marie MacDonald, Frances is the really rebellious sister that kind of bucks trend. Like, I think she's kind of a Frances, right? So I think those characters are like the most fun to read, and like I love reading them, but there aren't a lot of them to read. So
which is why we're so grateful for this, for Felicity, for Fizzy, for Alexandra the Great.
Yes, that's what they call her at the Met. She is loosely based on Kathleen Battle, if people know Kathleen Battle, because Kathleen Battle was a Black opera singer in the 80s. I know your daughter loves Kathleen Battle. We both do. We listen to her all the time. And Kathleen was a very, very celebrated singer who went to the Met. She was African American, just beautiful, very unique voice, very, very high voice. But she was difficult, and she used to get in fights with directors and with conductors, and she didn't do as she was told, and she threw tantrums, and she caused problems, and the Met ended up firing her, and her career basically ended when it was at its peak, and she was no longer working. And even today, like, you can like see interviews with her, like she's still around and she still kind of talks about music, and you can tell she just loves it. But I don't know if she had mental health issues, like what was going on with her, but the Met just couldn't handle it. And I thought that was really interesting, just kind of like how far can talent, how much liberty do you get with talent before people's other expectations start to come into play? So Felicity is a lot like that, except she doesn't get fired. She almost gets fired. So you'll see her fighting.
She navigates that really well too.
You'll see her fighting with directors, with the general manager of the Met, and fighting with conductors because she wants to sing slower and they want her to sing faster. And she's like, why do you get to set the tempo for what I have to sing? And a lot of these are just assumptions as a singer that you follow the conductor, and that's everybody keeps telling you follow the conductor, you're not going to sing. But she gets the conductors to slow down because she's not willing to follow the conductor. And so it kind of challenges that patriarchy that is in music.
Absolutely adore that. Do you want to read a little bit for us, and then I'll ask you different questions? Okay.
So I can now read another section which takes place in London. So that's where she goes to study opera. So she's 18 when she goes, and that's where she meets these Grenadian revolutionaries and her future lover, Claude Buckingham. And this is where she starts wearing her hair naturally for the first time. Well, she tried it once before, but this time she commits to it. So this is a little bit about that. Felicity's, and this is London, England in 1966 now. Felicity's bathroom at Mrs. Dinnerstein's was even chillier than the rest of the house, with barely enough room to maneuver between the toilet, sink, and tub. To wash her hair, she had to plug the meter so that the water ran hot, which in actuality meant lukewarm, and then either sit in the tub and bend her head underneath the tap, or stand over the sink and do the same. In preparation for this adventure, she'd visited a beauty shop in Lewisham after class. Claude had recommended the salon, which was at such a distance from the Guildhall it involved changes at 2 tube stations. He had offered to go with her the next weekend, and she had agreed, but then invented a rehearsal and gone by herself as a surprise. Faye's place smelled of spices simmering in a pot, the sizzle of coconut oil evaporating through the teeth of a hot comb, and the sweet chemical mix of shampoo suds. Calypso music blared through a radio, just as it had done in Grenada when Felicity had visited 8 years ago. Customers sat in leather chairs with their heads streaked white with lye, or bristling with rollers and topped with hooded dryers. Mannequin busts topped with wigs lined every wall except for one, which held shelves of endless rows of bottles and pots. Felicity stood in front of them, trying to decide what to buy. "Hello, love," said a stylist to Felicity. She was dressed stylishly in a patterned mini, her own hair straight and shiny. "Do you need a relaxer?" "No," Felicity said. "I just need to buy some hair pomade." "Oh," the stylist said. "You're one of those girls who does their own hair at home? No wonder your edges are so frizzy. Pretty hair like yours, I could nice that up for you quick. Come in once a week and I'll have you sorted." "I don't want to wear it straight anymore," Felicity said. The stylist stepped back and sucked her teeth. "You're one of those Americans. Talking about black is beautiful then. Easy for you to say." So a recurring theme is that when she's in London, people always confuse her for an American.
Yeah.
Felicity remembered Marlene's outburst at Christmas, but this time she would not be cowed. "I can go somewhere else and buy what I need," she told the stylist. The stylist pointed. "Get that one and that one," she said. "Put the lotion on when the hair is wet and comb it through good. Twist up the curls around your fingers, understand? Then use the gel to harden them, and when it's almost dry, use this pomade for shine." "Thanks," said Felicity. "Oh, and get this." The stylist lifted a wide-toothed comb. "Never use a brush." Having lost the opportunity to regularly straighten Felicity's hair, she pressed merchandise on her instead. As Felicity waited at the register for the stylist to bring up her purchases, the woman said, "When you get tired of it, come back here, you hear?" Felicity would find another salon next time. She chose the sink and stuck her head into the flow from the tap. Tepid water ran through the strands of her hair, changing their shape into bends and squiggles. She coated them with the products, shaped them into ringlets, and waited hours for them to dry while she studied her scores. When she eventually looked in the mirror, her curls were back, vibrant and full, but more sculpted than they had been the last time she wore them out. She shook her head from side to side and watched them bounce up and then settle back down. She had forgotten how, in its natural state, twists and turns of her hair brought out its multiple shades, reddish brown with gold and tawny streaks catching the light. It was a miracle, this hair. It could do anything. It claimed space for itself. It announced itself. And it was hers.
I have goosebumps. I just love that. I mean, hair in the Black community is very complicated. And I think we get this signaling from the beauty, the beauty industry, from magazines and from the movies that, if you're Black and if your hair can approximate a white standard of beauty, it has to be straighter and, looser. And so if you have a looser curl pattern, you're closer to whiteness, closer to privilege. And if your hair is kinky and very rough, you need to do something about that. There are products for that. Why aren't you doing that? Right? So, but in the Black community, especially with the women, it can also be a point of jealousy, just like colorism, right? And we see this, and it reminds me, it just really reminds me of other books I've read, like The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison's, and there's a character there, Maureen, who just, is just like, yeah, I have better hair, a better color, I'm prettier than you. But what we see with Felicity is that, so that closer to whiteness with the hair, it's a lie, because white people never see her that way at all. They're always struggling and seeing her hair as problematic. So that complexity, tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, I mean, I think you've hit on that, but colorism is a term that we use, and that very much goes back to colonialism and enslavement. So the African diaspora began with the removal of people from Africa as enslaved people, and we were then brought all through the Americas, whether to Canada or the Caribbean or South America. And then, of course, what happens is that people start intermingling. So slave owners sleep with the women that they're enslaving and have mixed children. And some of the Caribbean islands, there's indigenous people there, and they mix with some of the Black people. And then later on, people come in from China and India and all kinds of places. You have this melting pot of people that are mixed, belonging to the African diaspora, but there's all these different shades and types of hair in this spectrum that occurs from that. Some very dark, some very light, and people all along the middle in between. And so there's a social hierarchy that starts developing where the lighter ones are considered closer to white, and so they have more social standing and more privileges, and so people aspire to that and resent that. But at the same time, most people are somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, so you can be dark or you can be light, kind of depending who else you're with. You can put me next to people that will make me look dark, believe it or not. You can put me next to people where I will look extremely light. And so everybody kind of like exists in these multiple spaces where you're not really defined as one thing, but people will define you. And so that creates this complexity. And then, of course, when you come from a diasporic community into the Western world, so now you're living in Canada, you're living in the UK, you're living in the US, you're in white spaces now, and that sort of mixing and complexity isn't necessarily seen by most white people, because most white people don't think about that. They don't look at somebody and go, okay, they're like browner than my grandmother, but lighter than my grandfather. Like, you guys wouldn't do that, right? So like, they're just Black or person of color or brown, you know? And so there's more of a homogeneity that comes living here. So people are always kind of operating in multiple spaces. So Felicity's experiencing that, right? Because when she's in the opera world, she looks different. They don't know what to do with her hair. They don't know how to light her. There's one scene where there's a lighting director that is like, you look weird on stage. I need to redo my whole lighting plot for your skin color. Because she's the only person that's that brown in that space. But then when she goes to Grenada, she's the lightest one. So now all of a sudden people looking at her and saying, well, you have privileges. So, and she does there. So that is her reality, that she's always trying to navigate these spaces where she has others defining who she is.
And perhaps it also becomes this kind of competition within the community, because she comes and she's pretty and she's lighter, and then she's also taking the man that some of the other women also already wanted.
And that's like the thing, right? Because I mean, the other women see Claude's choice of Felicity as a romantic partner, as a betrayal of his values, because he's a revolutionary. He is leading a very Black-centered movement that is anti-colonial and anti-oppression, and here he is picking up with this foreign Canadian light-skinned opera singing mouthy diva, and all the other women are supporting the man, and they're staying quiet, and they're darker skinned, and they're just not, they're different. So they think that, well, you know, does he really practice what he preaches if he chooses this woman over us? And so his loyalty is questioned, and then she's questioned as, you even belong here, like, why are you even here? So definitely that is a conflict in their relationship, where he feels that he has to kind of overcompensate for that, or make excuses for that, or justify that. And so I guess the question for the reader is, do they have true love? Or is this just is he choosing her for status? Is she choosing him for belonging, or do they love each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about this
Yeah.
book is the complexity of the characters. Like nobody is good or bad. Everyone is just trying to do their best. And also seeing, I mean, because we're always with Felicity, we can see how genuine her struggle is. So that even when she makes these mistakes, it's like it feels true to her character. That, you know, so what? So what she's maybe she's being unfaithful to a partner. And it just seems to me that that's something other people can do, and it does not define you as a but perhaps if you're an opera star also that tracks.
Well, she self-sabotages for sure.
Yeah.
And she also doesn't have healthy relationships modeled to her because she's raised by a single mother. Her father he's of Ukrainian descent, but he's not in her life. We find a little bit more about him very late in the book. But she's always grown up with this dead father that she doesn't see, that she feels would have loved her if she had the chance to know him, but her mom kind of has short shrift with that idea. And she has a mother who is very strict and traditional and religious. And her mom, because she's an immigrant and has a tough life, wants her daughter to have a better life, which her mom defines as going to church, getting married, having babies, settling down, maybe teaching Sunday school or teaching piano lessons or something like that. But, you know, the very 1950s sort of trad wife life. And so that is not what Felicity wants. And she knows that as a young girl, that she wants a big stage to live on. And so there's conflict between them for that. They don't really get each other. She always feels like her mom doesn't love her. Her mom doesn't want her. She was a mistake. She shouldn't have been born. We get some of the circumstances of how she's born a little bit later. It's very tragic. It's very traumatic. Mom passes on her trauma. And so that is another sort of piece of the book. So she is kind of damaged because of that. And she's really seeking the validation through singing, because she realizes she can get applause and people can tell her she's a beautiful voice and people write nice things about her in newspapers. And so she's really looking for that approval. But at the same time, she does things that would jeopardize it by you know, annoying the conductors or having affairs with people that it just would not be smart to do. Not behaving, I think she calls it at one point. And so I think a lot of us do that, right? Like you get close to success and then you get scared, you self-sabotage. So I think it is a very human thing to do.
Definitely, very human impulse, especially even in art, right? You know what you need to do and you just don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Before I open the floor to questions from the audience, I wanted to just what was your best revelation about writing this book?
You know, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't know if there was just one, but I think honestly, like for this, it was just like I can finish a book. So, this was a very long time in the making. It was my first novel, and I never really thought I would write a novel. I always sort of wanted to, and I think in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to do it. But again, the self-sabotage thing,
and life,
and various, you know, like life and a lot of things. And when I started writing this, I was like, you know what, I might just do this, and like, who's gonna read it? No one's gonna read this. No one's gonna publish this. So I think just kind of getting to the point where I was like, oh wow, like I think I might actually have like something here that people want to read. Was like a huge revelation. So like it took a long time to get to that point, but I think just the joy I think of creating. And it's funny because I know we've talked a lot about, like, this probably sounds like a very intense book and it has a lot of tragedy and it has a lot of drama, but I really wanted it to be a hopeful book.
And it is. I think it is.
And I really wanted it to be about self-love and self-discovery and self-acceptance. So all of that is there as well. So I think that was the revelation, was like how that comes through piece of the story, and how do I take this story of this very tragic revolution in Grenada that did not succeed, and it gets crushed by the United States. They come in and it takes a few days, but they take control of the island. It never goes back to the coup. It's been sort of neo-colonial ever since. And you have this woman who's broken in so many ways and loses her lover and really doesn't find love in that sense in the book, but yet there's beauty and hope and joy.
Yeah.
Which comes through music, and it comes through art, and it comes through self-acceptance, and it comes through accepting that you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted people to feel validated, I guess,
Yeah.
what Felicity, like all the things Felicity looks for, the belonging, the validation. I wanted that to actually be in this book. And I hope
And I
that
think
it
the
is.
way that it ends just makes me wonder like how that's going to transform her practice, her opera, because you can see a new resolve to that she's going to bring to her work. And that's a beautiful way to end a story, because when the book ends, you can still imagine how life might continue.
Yeah, like the show goes on and life goes on, as one of my friends put it. And I think that that's exactly it. Like, you don't necessarily always have the perfect family or the perfect relationship or the perfect ending, but you have your work and your art and whatever it is that you're committed to and passionate about, and that's what gives you the strength to continue. And that's what she dedicates herself to, and I think that's what the reader can dedicate themselves to.
Yeah. It's a good ending. I wondered if you might have any questions, or we have like 15 minutes.
Bring a microphone to the audience if you have questions, so everyone can hear you.
So you would take that one.
Sorry,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not. And that's okay too.
If there aren't any questions, I have many.
I have one too.
Oh,
Okay.
look at that.
I might have two. I
Okay.
don't know. Do you know this person?
Which person?
Is this fictional?
Oh yes, this is completely fictional. So I mean, it is based on,
Okay.
like I said, it's based on some real characters. So
Okay.
happening battle and a lot of the Grenada Revolution figures. But I created.
And was her voice
People.
part soprano?
She's a coloratura. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
of course.
A dramatic coloratura.
Yeah,
So she
yeah.
sings Violetta, and she sings like other roles, but sort of her first role that she sings is she sings a lot of bel canto.
Okay.
So
Yeah, sure.
so she starts with that, and she sings Handel.
Would she,
yeah.
when in your mind, is she a contemporary of what's, I see her name. She's a woman of color, tall.
Marian Anderson?
No. She just passed, perhaps within the last 10 years or so. Oh,
I think I know who you mean.
yeah,
Like the names.
and her name
Yeah.
passed, and I'm too old, I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I mean, I think she is based on some of the early black
Jessie
divas.
Norman.
Jessie Norman, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, different voice types for sure, different presence, I think, but definitely I think she is based on those early pioneers, like I said, that kind of make the space for others to come after them. So I definitely was thinking about how incredible they had to be to reach where they reached, facing everything they had to face.
Yeah.
Singers like Jessie Norman for sure, and Marian Anderson, and Shirley Verrett, and like a lot of those early divas. And I know in Canada we have Portia White, who's, I don't, you guys know about her, but she was a Halifax opera singer that was around the 30s. She was singing, and she faced a lot of discrimination, but she persevered. And I think just that, what that takes was a lot of what I was thinking about in the world so wide, for sure. Oh, behind.
This question may be very convoluted, but I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
You talked about the intersection a little bit, relative color, patriarchy, religion. I've been to Grenada a couple of times.
excellent.
It's a very, very religious place.
Yes, it is.
And I was also there just before the Americans went in and smashed the revolution.
Oh, you would love this one.
Yeah.
And I very specifically went there to study the revolution.
Oh, wow.
Because it really looked like something was cooking, and that's kind of how I met my husband.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Anyway, what I'm interested in is how women get undermined by the patriarchy. We also get undermined by other women, and then, like I was saying, you have that intersection of gender, race, relative race. So are there any peer supporters, or is there always jealousy? And how do the women play into that? Do you know what my question is?
Yeah,
Trying to figure out how people actually get supported, as opposed to, oh, you're so pretty.
Yeah.
As opposed to,
there are definitely some men that support Felicity. She has a very close male friend, and so that's another theme of the book, is the friendship with Jack, who is a lifelong friend from Winnipeg, and he's sort of always there to pick up the pieces. She has another friend named Lindsay, who's a man, who helps kind of get her first break. So there definitely are good characters that do that. In terms of the women, I mean, she doesn't have great relationships with women generally. So there is a lot of jealousy, but she also has two moments in the book where she is very selfless. And for those who follow opera, like I actually call them her Musetta moments, because in La Boheme, there's a character named Musetta, and I don't know if you've seen that opera, but she is a very diva-ish character in the opera. So she's very attention grabbing, and she's outrageous, and she's a flirt, and she wants all the men to be looking at her all the time. And for most of the opera, she's kind of this shallow, selfish woman. But then at the end, when Mimi is kind of the contrast to her, because she's very sweet, simple, well-behaved, and then Mimi's the one that's dying. And at the very end, Musetta sells her jewelry and her fur. Oh, she sells her jewelry to go buy Mimi a fur muff to put her hands in to stay warm. And she sells her clothing to buy Mimi medicine. And she comes back and gives it to her. And her partner says, "Oh, Musetta, you are a good person," in Italian. And so that's kind of where we see that, behind that facade of selfishness, she has a heart, and she cares, and she wants to do something. And so Felicity has two moments like that in the book, where she actually helps other women, other Black women, that maybe haven't been the nicest to her or haven't really earned that, but she realizes that she, who she is that she's going to do something for them. So definitely, I think I wasn't trying to have good characters and bad characters. Like, they're all complex. Like, all of us as humans are complex. We have our good side, we have our bad side, we do good things, we do bad things. Some books, I think, don't get into that enough. They just kind of make very like one-dimensional characters. I wanted these to be like real people that sometimes they're annoying and sometimes they're really sweet. So, and then in terms of the other part that you asked about, kind of the woman's role in the revolution, definitely that was a theme. As I said, that the women are often subservient to the men, or expected to just support them, and they don't necessarily pay attention to the woman's concerns or what the women value. And so there are times in the novel where the women are silenced, and there's other times where they do speak up. There's a time where one of the women says, "Well, why can't I carry a gun? I'm like the best shot. You said I was the best shot you've ever seen, so like I'm carrying this gun." And she takes a gun, which was normally not a male role. So there's definitely a lot of that back and forth, where the men aren't quite sure what the women should be doing, and the women aren't quite sure, because there is that patriarchy and that, as you said, that religious kind of thinking that is so strong in the culture, that it has been difficult sometimes in Black social movements for women to get voices heard. And that's in South Africa, that's in the United States. We know that like Martin Luther King's movement was very church-based as well. A lot of the women were not front and center in that. And so, but there have always been Black women's movements. We talked about Bell Hooks, Black feminist scholar that has written about that. We know about Sojourner Truth, even back in enslavement times, Harriet Tubman. There were these very strong Black women liberators that have always been there, but haven't always been acknowledged or given voices. And so that was another thing that I was trying to accomplish in the book, was to center a woman. When I talked about the Grenada Revolution, so instead of talking about the men that led it, let's talk about their lover, their partner, and what she went through.
Do we have any other questions in the audience here?
I do have, the guy that she snags in Grenada, was that based on Bishop then, do you think, as a
Okay, yes.
character?
I don't think we talked about that yet. So that is how the book began actually, because my mom all my life talked about this Grenada Revolution and other things too, like other social movements, but anti-apartheid being another one that was talked about a lot that's in the book, but talked about Grenada a lot. And one of the reasons being that my mom was living in London with my aunt in the 60s. And they were friends with Maurice Bishop, who was the actual Prime Minister of Grenada, and the real Neville is the character in the book that stands in for him. And so Maurice was a friend of theirs, and he actually started going out with my mom's cousin that he met at the house. And they used to laugh because when he was a young law student, Maurice Bishop would say, "I'm going to go back to Grenada and rule it someday and be the prime minister." And they go, "Oh yeah, that's really funny. Like, haha, I'm sure you will." And then guess what? Like, surprise! Like, he actually goes back and leads a revolution. But my cousin ended up, they broke up, and he ended up marrying a different person, his wife, Angela Redhead. And she went on to her life. And so that was where I got the idea, was that what would it be like to date somebody, fall in love, break up, and then you see them get killed on TV, and then a war starts because of it. What would that be like? And so that was actually where the first germ of Felicity came to my mind. So yeah, Maurice Bishop was someone that my mom actually knew.
I want to ask you a question that writers don't like being asked.
Oh.
But what are you currently working on? What can we look forward to hearing from you soon?
So this novel just came out, and I do have a short story collection that will be coming out in February 2027. So you can look for that then. But I am also working on other novels. So the one that I think is probably next, maybe, is one that's a little later in time. So it's set in the 1990s, and it's about a young girl who goes missing, and it turns out that she's lost in more ways than one. So she's physically lost, she's emotionally lost, she's spiritually lost, and it goes through what baggage did her parents and her grandparents bring that makes her who she is today.
Yeah.
So it goes through colonialism a lot, and more about colors, and it has a lot of the same themes. The mother-daughter relationship is in there. It also intersects with police brutality. There's an incident of that. There's a lot of there's a lot of interracial relationships in that one, so it really explores that dynamic and what does it mean to leave your country for a man you love and settle down and have a family, but then not connect your kids back to the place you're from. So that is really, I think, the central question in that book. It's really about being in diaspora and what it means to be kind of the first generation born outside of the homeland. So that's hopefully the next one.
Excited.
Oh, another question.
She's got another question. Sorry, I interrupted
Well,
you.
first of all, just a small comment. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really even your homeland in the sense that it's a colonial island.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more complicated. But my
For sure.
question is,
Mhm.
what's your relationship with your mother like?
You know what? Like it's good. I know. I'm like I don't know if I want to read this book because she might start reading into it. But I mean, definitely. I think growing up in the diaspora as an immigrant, there's definitely a culture clash in your home growing up. So I mean, definitely we didn't always see eye to eye. We definitely had different values about a lot of things. I mean, my mom is an interesting person because her mom was like the very traditional Caribbean person we just talked about, very religious, very proper, very colonized, and her dad was a revolutionary. And he was an anti-colonialist, and he led protests, and he broke the law and got like arrested, and they actually had a law that said that you can't drum. The British brought in a law saying no drumming, and he drummed anyway. And so just very, very different. So my mom is very much a mix. So yes, she went to protests when she was young, and she did the anti-apartheid, but she also had a lot of expectations about you know, like being a lady and going to school and shutting up and doing what you're told. And so there was definitely always that kind of conflict. So that was always interesting. And I think I too am kind of a mix of that. So, but definitely I think as an adult, my mom and I definitely have a close relationship, and you know, I kind of, you get it, right? Like I know what it's like to grow up in a colonial society. It's really hard. And so I think a lot of the things that I used to kind of take offense to, and I kind of just laugh them off. I'll even joke with my mom. Like my mom doesn't like braids.
No.
Yeah. So like she has this thing against them because I guess they were not allowed in schools when she was growing up. You couldn't have braids and locks and stuff like that. So she doesn't like them. So, and I have no problem putting braids in my hair. So when I have braids in my hair, my mom will just be like, "Oh, I hate those braids," and I'll just be like, you know, she just has to tell me that every time. Like, I mean, you think she'd be used to it by now, and I'll just be like, I know, you're colonized, like you don't like braids, and like we just kind of, you know, like it is what it is. So you know, we could fight about it, but like, what's the point? Like, she knows I'm gonna do it anyway, and like I know she's gonna comment anyway, and like it like it just, you know, you kind of make your peace with things, and it's just like, you know, like you only have your mom for so long, and yeah, so we're great, and she's great with my kids, but I mean, no relationship is perfect.
No.
So, you know, that's where the human stories are, right?
Yeah. And I see where
Yeah.
Felicity gets some of
And how about your aunt?
The one, like, well, I have a lot of aunts, the one that lived in London with my mom.
Yeah.
Well, she passed away in 2016.
And
So, so she isn't obviously in my life anymore, but well, in that way, like she still is. But my aunt was definitely an activist, and she was very vocal about a number of things. And she worked for the UN, for UNESCO. So she worked for and she actually traveled, like she was the representative for Africa. So she spent a lot of time in Africa and always talked about that. And actually, one thing that was really cool that I think will impact my writing going forward was last year I went to Ghana for the first time, like my first time anywhere in Africa, and that was funded through Canada Council. And that was amazing. So I can't stop talking about how amazing that was. So as a person from the diaspora that had never been there, it was just like so special to go back to the land where like my ancestors came from. And especially in Ghana, they have a lot of infrastructure for returners to come and see the stories. So I got to go to the places that enslaved people were taken from, see how they lived before they were enslaved, learn about their culture, meet people, like meet their descendants. So it was just really, really amazing to see that. And I think that also made me understand a lot more about, it's kind of strange, but it made me understand a lot more about my family history, because I saw how long the trauma has been going on and how many generations that has impacted. So it made me a lot more understanding, I guess, of that and how long it takes to get over that. And I realized, I think, how much we're not healed because we still don't talk about this stuff enough. And that's why I kind of want to break it open into the things I write, where I'm trying to tell these stories and overcome the shame and the stigma that we've had about stuff that really we shouldn't. And that's a lot of the root, I think, of the mother-daughter issues that Felicity had, and I guess if I want to say I had them, is because there's so many things that are taboo to talk about. Hair and skin color being one, sexuality being another, religion being another, and there's just so many things you're not supposed to question or ask, or why is it this way? And I was always a kid, well, why, right? And like, well, because I said so. And so I think I get to ask and answer those questions here, right? And in other things that I write. Yeah, and then because I have that outlet to do that, I don't need to go ask the person, right? So yeah.
No, that's lovely. That one go there.
Sorry. Look around.
Well, thank you so much for reading to us from your book, for coming all the way from Winnipeg to come and present your book to us here in Saskatchewan. It's really been a pleasure, and what a lovely book to be able to spend time with and to hear you talk about it before we can delve into it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting and asking really thoughtful questions, and to everybody out there that asked thoughtful questions or listened or was here. So it's always amazing to meet readers and talk about books and writing. What's better, right?
Yes.
So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And thank you to McNally for hosting. I love McNally. We have McNally in Winnipeg too, and just so supportive of writers, so supportive of books and culture and knowledge and ideas, and
Yeah.
always a pleasure to be in the store. Like, it's just one of those magic places where it's
Right.
like, I belong here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spend a lot of money here, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. And Zilla is gonna sit over here and sign some books. If you wanna come and get yourself a signed copy of a book, and once you get it signed here, you can pay for it over at the checkout. Thank you once again.
That's all. Thanks. These books.
Right.
Is there a pen there?
Yeah, there